Story 1. I was thinking about it, and personally, I would be happier getting a role for being overweight or unattractive than losing a role for not being attractive enough. Story 2. I work at a theater school. The acting students are typically striking looking in some way. Strikingly beautiful, strikingly gaunt, strikingly unsettling, strikingly kind. The heavier students are usually a bit big but also very strong and agile. The less attractive students are unique and interestingly unattractive, not merely less attractive than their peers, but positively more so. They're both the same distance from plain, but in different directions. This is usually a selling point for them, and they know it. Someone who looks heavy and lazy but has the stamina to perform all day is an absolute prize. Someone whose selling point is his train wreck of a face knows exactly what he looks like, and in conjunction with his performance skills, has a very sellable product. Remember that most roles have an audition process. You subscribe to or ask your agent to keep an eye out for roles you are confident you can play. Most actors aren't after a Juliet, a Hamlet. They are after roles that fit their description and skill set. Short, plump, ginger-haired woman with a maternal smile in her late 40s is a role certain actors will find and send in a headshot for, just like Hispanic, unattractive, 50-plus pounds overweight man, lazy eye or missing teeth desirable, will catch the eye of others. You apply for the roles. Professional actors are confident self-starters after a job that pays, that gets them seen, that lets them show off their range so as to continue building their career. Story 3. I spent a few years in Los Angeles going to auditions. Some of the roles I got cast in include overweight jogger, fat guy with a beard, and guy waiting in line for donuts. It was actually not a specifically fat guy audition, more of a hipster, which was also a lot of the roles I went out for. It wasn't that awkward. And I got to know a lot of dudes who kind of look like me just from seeing them at the same auditions. The most awkward audition was for a Polish tire commercial where I had to be topless. Story 4. I've been a professional actor for over 20 years, and I can say it's not awkward at all. If you have an interesting look and you have signed up for and showed up for a casting, you know the deal. Ugly actors aren't less smart or self-aware than good-looking ones. For example, little people or dwarves get into acting knowing that they are more likely to be an elf in a Christmas special than end up like Peter Dinklage, but they want to act regardless. Bottom line, we are all too needy and self-obsessed to feel awkward, even the ugly ones. Story 5. Not quite the same thing, but I saw an advert where they were looking to film in a bedsit. I got in contact, and the location scout came around to see my place. The film was the low-budget drugs drama London to Brighton, and they wanted a bedsit for where the two lead characters lived. Both characters were heroin addicts living in abject misery without a penny to their name. They didn't use my place in the end, but the location scout did say, "It was almost perfect. The only problem is that it's too small," which made me feel really great about where I lived back then. I can tell you. Story 6. I read that the actress who played Dolores Umbridge was told by a friend, "Oh my gosh, you would be perfect for that role." Then she read that Umbridge was described as toad-like in the books and was like, "Wow, thanks." Story 7. I've thought about this a lot, especially with kids. The little girl in Desperate Housewives who was the fat kid, Eva Longoria's character's kid. I'm pretty sure that was her storyline. How does a small child grow up with self-esteem when what she is known for is being the fat kid on that TV show? Story 8. Former casting director in Hollywood for 13 years, home box office, Netflix, and every major network, plus some international commercials. It's not awkward at all. It's a business like any other business, and every role has a place and is extremely important. The actors all know that. I've never had a single actor not really want a part. They all know that any role can be a huge career booster at any level. Be it for commercials, music videos, TV shows, or films, all of which I cast, they 1. Were excited about the money and 2. Knew it could be a great opportunity to do what they loved, make great connections on set, leads to more roles, and take their career to the next level. I'll add that the breakdown for a role, also known in Hollywood as a job listing, never says ugly. Like every business, Hollywood has its own vocabulary. And as others have pointed out, Hollywood ugly is not everyday life ugly. If you think about it, Any ugly actor always has some really specific character traits that make them who they are. Funny, charming, devious, conniving. So the actor needs to have those traits and act them well. It's rarely just about their looks. A role might be listed as age, 50s to 60s character actor, quirky, fun-loving, with a whole lot of other descriptors, along with a 3-line summary of key traits and context. All professional actors know what that means, and all that audition are there because they want to be. It isn't a bait and switch. There are no surprises. Overwhelmingly, almost all actors I've cast were an absolute joy to work with. A solid 98%. Only about 2% were not. Some of those you've seen in the press. And they absolutely would come back for repeat roles, even if character roles. I always treated every cast member with great kindness and respect, regardless of how they looked, because I knew the value that each one brought. I was always very grateful for their hard work because they made the whole project come together, and that made everyone happy. Also, casting directors are rooting for their cast to succeed. We get just as excited behind the scenes to see them excel in a role as they are to play the role. This means all the actors, young, old, pretty, or character, we're equally excited for each one's success. Adding a Hollywood ugly fun fact, typically where networks draw the line is teeth. That's right, it's kind of a known joke. National Broadcasting Company, American Broadcasting Company, you name it. A person could be missing a limb, hair, appendages, and it's not a problem just as long as they have all their teeth. That's where they draw the line. It would appear that for Americans at least, it's the one thing that makes people actually change the channel. Adding a response about kids, per the question above regarding casting the unattractive kid. In short, I never cast roles like that because I simply couldn't on a moral and conscience level. Parents of kid actors are often, well, just unique and difficult. Think stage mom who wants their kid to be famous. So I already have my own views on all that. I didn't want to contribute to the problem. During my time in the business, I only cast a couple of projects with kids in them, and I only chose things that were super fun, encouraging, and that the kid would have a blast filming and be proud of. Because who wouldn't love playing with a giraffe all day? And make money. Super fun. Thank you for all the awards. I'm glad you found my comments informative. Casting for me was a real joy. Getting to find diamonds in the rough and having the honor of helping some of them on their path to forging great careers, playing amazing roles, and touching so many of you through their art and the characters they played. It's a special kind of magic, and I was happy to be a part of it. Now I get to sit back and watch my friends who are still in the business continue that work. Story 9, to actually answer the question that nobody has directly. Not awkward at all. People will absolutely jump at the chance to be the ugly one. They don't really care. It might be awkward mentally for them. Maybe, but it's nothing personal and they know it. Just another job opportunity. Like a classic meme goes, if someone paid you $200 but had to call you ugly, would you take it? Of course, I'm ugly. Not stupid. For what it's worth too, I think a main point is that it's an audition for the role of an ugly person. It doesn't mean you are dreadfully ugly. Just like how British people in movies aren't required to be played by British actors. Story 10. I knew a male actor, though I haven't seen him in years, who is always typecast for certain character roles because of his distinctive looks. He's had a pretty successful career, but when he told me about his work in different roles, I couldn't help but notice that he carried a certain sadness about not being the heroic figure that everybody loves. He had come to terms with his predicament. Him becoming an actor was in part a reaction against being an outcast and being bullied, but there was still a longing to be beautiful, loved, and admired. Story 11. I was watching the Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, where Larry thinks he's being sat in the ugly section in a restaurant. I was wondering how those actors felt knowing that they were being cast to be the people in the ugly section. Story 12. My friend works part-time as an actor. He often plays unpleasant characters. He knows he's a 5 in good lighting, but the film industry intentionally makes him appear as a 3 on camera. He doesn't mind. It's a job, and he understands the limitations of his appearance. Story 13. I remember watching an episode of Game of Thrones that featured a brothel in one scene and Walder Frey's unattractive daughters in another. I wondered what was the harder call to make home for a young actress. Hey mom and dad, I got the part. They said I'd be perfect to play a hideous, completely undesirable woman. Or, hey mom and dad, I got the part. They said I'd be perfect to play a naked writhing prostitute. Story 14. Wore my eye patch to a casting call that was requesting facial deformities or other injuries. A woman came up to me and asked what was under the patch. When I showed her that there was in fact no eye, I got to jump ahead in line. Cast as a wounded soldier extra in a Revolutionary War show. Had smallpox one day, lay in the infirmary the next, stuck in the mud another day. Pretty good food and money. Neat experience. All that to say, no one has an iota of shame. Own that. Story 15. Hello? I have made a few independent or low-budget films, acted in more than a few, and have assisted on crew. For the process I have witnessed, those in charge were pretty straightforward with everything regarding what the role was. Example. The first role I was ever cast for was a smaller part in an independent slasher. I was told I looked like a smarmy villain, and once I started acting the part, they cast me immediately. This is nothing new for me. For whatever reason, I always look like I am brooding or glaring. I guess it is the guy version of resting bitch face. They did not mean it in a bad way either. When they talked about my look, it was all for the sake of the camera, and when they got to know me, they learned quickly I am very easy to get along with. What is more, talent plus that certain look brought in quite a few inquiries for availability to play villains, bullies, corporate shills, and so on. It is not much, but it is honest work. The same can be said about other roles. If a role needed a bigger person, once the casting crew found their candidates, they were straightforward in letting them know what the role was. Of course, they were respectful, but transparency and respect were key so that everyone felt comfortable on set, especially if those characteristics became the butt of a joke. To be frank, though, I have never met an actor who was delusional about their appearance because they understood the camera is objective. This is not to say they do not exist, but that is my experience. Story 16. There's a model agency in London called Ugly. I imagine everyone involved knows what's involved. More generally, by the time they leave acting school, most actors will have figured out whether they are going to be playing Juliet. Overweight people know they are overweight. They move forward or not on that basis. I imagine it is a bit like playing villains. You want to tell the stories, so you play the role that the stories demand. In some cases, an attractive person will be made unattractive by using makeup and prosthetics. If you have to, you could do the same with an unattractive person to save their self-esteem. Story 17. I remember that when I was a kid, I was always so offended that I would always be cast as the ugly or funny roles. The old lady pirate in Pirates of Penzance. Or the funny sidekick. The one who couldn't sing in a chorus line. But then I became a drama teacher and started casting kids in roles. And I realized, from the point of view of the teacher, you only gave the ugly or funny roles to the genuinely talented kids. The ones you knew could pull it off. Because it's actually a lot easier to play an attractive or romantic lead than it is to play a goblin, she-witch, or troll. So now I try to remember that the kids cast as the ugly one are probably going to be upset that they didn't get the sexy romantic lead with the sweeping ballad, and I try to reassure them that they got the part not because they can't play the romantic lead, but because no one else was good enough to play their part. Story 18. There's this one video I saw on YouTube of talk show hosts and interviewers fat-shaming Jonah Hill, calling him unattractive because he always gets cast alongside people like Channing Tatum and Brad Pitt, and just generally making fun of him along those lines. It's very uncomfortable, and you can tell it bothers him quite a bit. He's recently lost a lot of weight though, so I'm happy for him. Story 19. As a talent representative, most actors are self-aware enough to know their type and how Hollywood perceives them. Weirdly enough, it's the pretty ones that have issues, not the character-type actors. Most character actors really like being character actors because they get the fun roles. They enjoy making themselves look different for auditions. Whenever my roommate, who's older, plump, and average-looking by Hollywood standards, gets an audition that requires someone ugly or fat, she enjoys it. She's like, awesome. I don't have to shower or wear makeup today, and I get to let it all hang out. For the most part, character actors really don't take the descriptions personally. Story 20. I'm pretty sure Casper Van Dien and Denise Richards were both cast in Starship Troopers specifically because they were conventionally physically attractive but also clearly dead behind the eyes. I wonder if they ever realized. Story 21. Somewhat related. I dated a guy I thought was stunning. Seriously, he was an 8 just getting out of bed in the morning. He was an aspiring actor. The problem was he was Arabic. Dark skin, nearly black eyes, wavy black hair. He knew he would often get typecast into certain roles, many of which would be unflattering, such as terrorist or eccentric character. He knew it, but he was excited about it anyway because he wanted paydays and he loved acting. I imagine it's similar for people getting cast in conventionally unattractive roles.